Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Super Size Me event, in which the Baldur is added to the game. Quite a few interesting things happening this week, as well as one pretty noteworthy thing about something that happened earlier this month. So, of course, there was a very weird interaction with the new Mythic that ended up coming out that basically made it so you couldn't really get Arachnean Weaver during that 1 week that coincided with the new monthly Mythic, because it overrided the Zolkari event. So to try to compensate for that, they have done a half-price Arachnean Weaver. This is the first and only time that a Mythic has been on discount. I wish this be a more of a reoccurring thing, where they would start bringing back some of the older Mythics on discount instead of the full overpriced price of what they normally are. But as you can see, normally they're 4,000 diamonds and all those resources, and now it's 2,000. This isn't necessarily the most optimal way that they could have really compensated for what ends up happening, because there might be some people who spend a bunch of event keys who tried for Arachnean Weaver who, don't have 2,000 diamonds. However, if you are a person who has 2,000 diamonds and you need Arachnean Weaver, I highly advise crafting this thing. It's okay to get 1 or 2 copies of it, and you get 2 copies for the price of 1 right now for the duration of this week. So I highly advise doing so. I'm even going to craft some, even though I already have one, as it mentions right there. But I want a few more. They're cheap enough that might as well. There's not really that many viable teams that use 2 or 3 Weaver. They're mostly just for messing around, but they're cheap enough that if you're going to bother doing it, now would probably be the time. But yeah, if you don't have a copy of Arachnean Weaver, not only is it really good for Guild Wars that we got going on this week, but yeah, it's half off. So if you have 2,000 diamonds before the end this week and you don't have Weaver, or you just happen to want another copy for whatever reason, then definitely worth considering, as this is the cheapest it will ever end up being as far as diamonds are concerned. But anyways, let's go over all of the normal stuff with the event. We have quite a few things going on this week, and a really interesting epic. So you get these really cheap, only 200 glory each, though do be mindful, we do have a new legend in the event key drop table this week, so you might not want to overbuy this necessarily, as you are going to be getting some copies as you open those event keys, so do be mindful of that. But you can stock up on blue-red. So this troop is actually really good. This basically closes the gap for early game skull spammers. While it is an epic, so not like the lowest of rarity things, generally most of the really viable skull spammers are underneath legendary and mythic, and this thing is pretty solid when it comes to skull spam. It creates 4 skulls boosted by blue allies. It is itself a blue ally, which means at minimum it will be creating 8 skulls. This means at maximum it can end up creating 20 skulls if all 4 people on your team are blue. So that has a lot of potential. 20 skulls is not a small amount of skulls, especially for 12 mana. And while it does require your entire team of, not only an entire team of blue, but also an entire team of blue that isn't dead yet, this has a lot of potential. And it's going to be probably used in a lot of early game, mid game kind of builds as you're progressing, while you don't have like all the really good like Divine Ishbal Aquilin combos or anything like that, or some of the really good mythics that end up doing like Doom Skull or Uber Doom Skull or other crazy things like that. This is going to be a great alternative leading up to that, as a great cheap skull spam option. One thing that's even better about this is Titan hero class is a great hero class for progressing through the game with, and is one of the most well-rounded hero classes, and it ends up getting 50% mana star off this thing. So you can run like an enraged version of Titan with a barrier on brown and end up getting some really good value off of this and give it a half mana start, meaning it's only going to need 6 mana, meaning you could potentially spam multiple of these on your team, especially if you have an enchant potion on a given event, and you could do some pretty crazy damage. It's actually really viable and possibly one of the best glory troops we've gotten all year. So yeah, make sure to get it. It's also an event key drop table, so you can get it that way too if you don't want to spend a glory for it, though of course glory's easy to come by for the most part. Anyways, speaking of that, of course, event key drop tables, as far as what's going on with this, it is a Stormheim event week. Fun fact, Stormheim was actually the first new kingdom ever added to the game. So there are 5 troops here that are not available in the drop table. These are the Penguin, which is obtained from that Guild War thing, and the 4 Frostfire Keep troops, of which the Frostfire King is actually pretty decent, though with the new hero classes coming up soon, maybe not so much. But yeah, the 4 Frostfire Keep troops and the Penguin are the only things not in drop table. Everything else you see here is in drop table. A couple of noteworthy things is there is a new troop that came into the game. It's pretty underwhelming though. It's Vedder the Vast. This is basically kind of just a standard mid-range devourer. You can kind of almost consider it like a mini Iron Gut, though not quite. It has a 10% base devour chance, ends up getting boosted by blue. Realistically, it's going to have roughly a 50% or so devour rate, like 40 to 60, somewhere within that ballpark normally, though it can be as low as 10% if you got denied on blue. So overall, not really worth using. There's a lot of other mid-range devour troops, and it's not really worth using compared to them. And obviously, once you have the mythics that do it better, there's no point in ever going back to these cheaper ones. And yeah, it's basically just a way weaker version of what already kind of exists within the game. So you're basically just getting it for completionist purposes. As far as some things that you might be trying to accumulate for the sake of having it, Yarrow Fire Mantle and Hindla aren't too bad. They're used in a highest HP team composition in the entire game. Actually, we have it set up for the Titan class when we go over all the teams, but it has the highest amount of starting HP of any team in existence, because Stormheim has a bunch of HP bonuses that ends up accumulating when using a bunch of giants, so ends up having that kind of gimmick to it. Overall, durability compared to damage isn't as good, but it's somewhat noteworthy in that it does form the a team composition that has the highest HP in the game. Aside from that, Mistralis does reside here. Mistralis is probably one of the top 10 mythics in the game, definitely pretty high up there, if not necessarily top 10. Pretty strong. Most noteworthy thing being the enchant on a single extra turn for your entire team, just as one single extra turn, and it also has automatic extra turn off of its ability, which is one of only a few mythics that end up having that, like Iron Gut itself and such, but as well as few that have a percent chance of doing it. But overall, probably worth mostly skipping on event keys. You definitely obviously want to get at least a copy of that and maybe use a blue orb on it to go get it maxed. The only problem with trying to go for Mistralis is, while she's one of the better mythics in the game, Jotnar Storm Shield is among one of the worst mythics in the game, so you're kind of gambling on if you're going to get something really good or really bad, so do be mindful of that. If you're missing both of them and you just need something to get 10 star, it might be worth it, though do be mindful that you might get a really bad mythic if you try going for her this week, so do be mindful of that. Overall, I would say, aside from getting the new legend, it is probably a week to skip on event keys, as nothing really too special here. And it's just stuff that you're not really going to use that often. There's a couple gimmicks that you could do with giants, but overall, it's not really a kingdom you pull troops from too often. And one of the best things in this kingdom now, you just get for glory this week, so you don't even necessarily need to do that many event keys. Anyway, aside from that, we do have two events going on, Guild Wars and this event that never exists called Tower of Doom. This rare rumor of an event that occurs currently once every 11 weeks. And it was already too slow when it was like once every 4 weeks. But yeah, this is, we got a new weapon for this. As per usual, 500 gems ends up getting it. If you don't want to spend 500 gems for it, you can get it in Soulforge cheaper this week than you normally would be able to. It's a pretty useless weapon, all the staves are, as far as this category of Doom weapon. However, for completion's sake, you might want to consider getting it and end up doing up to 500 gems and end up helping out your guild. As far as how this event runs, you basically have to report back the better rooms to your guild. So the main ones that you want to report back are things like Power, that gives you extra stats, Heroisms, which auto complete out a entire floor, killing out the boss, Lux, which end up giving you extra Doom kills, which helps for leaderboard as well as for getting the rewards. Haste, which basically just gives you your sigils back, which basically moves you closer to getting Valraven. And Fireballs, which basically take out room battles. Not the final battle, but just the room battles leading up to it. And you basically just want to report back all the useful rooms to your guild and end up going from there. Do be mindful that it is different per every single guild, so you will specifically have to communicate with your own guild, because whatever mine are is not the same for everyone. It is unique per guild. So make sure to communicate with your guild, either through Discord or through the game itself, or any means you wish to do so, and just communicate which rooms are for which. Generally, you want someone scouting out all 4 of them, whoever's most in the lead, and then they report back whatever useful rooms your guild wants to end up doing, and then everyone else in the guild goes and does those rooms, because it is not worth using a sigil on every single room. You will be wasting a lot of sigils. You only want to use sigils on the rooms that are actually good, and you have to communicate with your guild in order to know which ones are good. Also, this is a weird event, and you have to go pretty deep into to get all the rewards. Even if your entire guild has finished up to stage 12, you do actually have to do up to floor 25 to get all the rewards. So technically, once it says floor 26, you know you have completed out everything. The reason for this is floors 1 to 25, when you kill out the Doom here, ends up giving a special scroll which upgrades those weapons, those very elusive scrolls that basically don't even exist, that are so absurdly hard to get these days. But those little scrolls over here, the ones that upgrade all these weapons. Generally, when it comes to upgrading these weapons, you mostly just want to upgrade the Doom-related ones, the ones that do full AoE into Doom Skull Convert. However, the Hammer one's kind of okay too, and obviously a lot of people go for the book upgrades. I personally did all of the AoE Doom Skull ones, as well as all of the books, which are really common for Guild War Defense, though not really used much outside of that purpose. But that's basically what these little color scrolls are used for. and specifically ends up giving blue ones this time around. But overall, the two priorities for how you end up doing the Doom ones is any of the ones that are like this, where it has the Doom Skull convert, hits all enemies. These are highest priority for upgrading. Second highest are all the ones that are the books. You probably see this a lot in Guild Wars if you're later in the game. These are really good for countering on pure color Guild War days, and guess what? It's a Guild War week, so if you have the blue book laying around, you might want to consider upgrading it potentially, as you're going to be getting a lot of those scrolls throughout the week through the Tower of Doom, so potentially worth considering. So those are the main two. Otherwise, get Doomed Blade upgraded, because that's probably the highest priority for blues first, before you end up going into the book. Though you could do it the other way around if you really want to, though I personally feel like the AoE into Doom Skull converting ones are the best first option for your Doom upgrades. Anyways, aside from that, we do have a Guild Wars going on. Pretty standard Guild Wars. We'll be doing that every single night at our normal time here on the channel, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But just make sure to set all your defend teams. Make sure all 24 troops are unique so that you get the full 12,000. You can tell very easily, because if this says 12,000 when it goes, please go. There it goes. If this says 12,000, you know for sure you have set all unique troops. If that doesn't say 12,000, make sure to adjust them until it does say 12,000. Because all these have to be unique. And then when you do the offensive teams, you just make them pure color and go from there and just complete out each one of the daily battles when they come around. And don't forget to upgrade your Sentinel some. It's a little bit extra stats and it helps out the rest of your guild. Aside from that, we got several events going on throughout the week. This Tuesday we have Frostfire Keep, which has a pretty decent legend there, though that legend's going to be pretty invalidated based on a new hero class that we have coming up. We still don't know if that hero class is going to get rebalanced some before it launches. However, we do have a new hero class coming with a new kingdom very soon. And that hero class will basically make the main troop that's really good from this kingdom pretty bad. However, it does have a pretty noteworthy tank that we'll be mentioning in a little bit. The rare there has a 65% reduction as a rare, which is a really solid option to consider as an early game tank. Wednesday, we have ourselves a giant pet. So if you want to go get more upgrading for that, Giant typing's pretty decent, ends up synergizing with Titan hero class. Speaking of Titan hero class, Thursday class event is Titan. Titan is a pretty noteworthy hero class. I highly advise, if you are a newer player, to end up focusing on getting Titan to level 100 first, before focusing on any other hero class. While there are a lot of hero classes that do specific things way better than that of Titan, Titan is still the overall best well-rounded hero class for doing pretty much everything you need to do. It has a way to mana accumulate, has enrage, has a bunch of durability, has barrier on brown, has a natural half mana start, ends up giving half mana start to a lot of decent troops like the ones that end up doubling a certain color, has a lot of purposes that, while not necessarily the best at a lot of things, ends up being very well-rounded at basically every aspect you ever need. You could theoretically go the entire game without ever upgrading anything other than Titan. While that isn't advised to do, you theoretically could get away with it just because of how well-rounded it is. So highly advise making it the first class that you really focus on. Probably not worth spending gems to try to get upgraded. It's a little bit of a waste on Thursday, but definitely throw down the free battles, and if you haven't already unlocked it, you actually can unlock it without even having to do the Stormheim Kingdom on Thursday. If you're like super early on in the game and you still haven't gotten around to Stormheim questline, you can actually unlock Titan without even having to do the questline. You would simply just have to do the little quest for the class itself, but you wouldn't have to do the full questline thingy. So if you're just recently started, great way to go get Titan, if nothing else. And on Friday, as you can already see by the timer, we have Bounty Hunter. Pretty standard Bounty Hunter, not really too special to end up mentioning there. It's getting another bounty troop, and you know, just plays like normal Bounty Hunter. You just put the bounty troop most likely in last slot, and you just put a standard triple team and just get a bunch of points. So as far as Soulforge, there are 5 mythics available this week, as we kind of mentioned, as Arachne Weaver is actually an additional one compared to the 4 that we normally have. Obviously, the most noteworthy thing, hands down, to go craft this week is very obviously Arachne Weaver, as it is half price. So if you have 2,000 diamonds and you do not have Weaver, you want to go do this like right now or before the end of the week and try to find some way to get diamonds. One big issue with this is there's no technically way to infinite farm diamonds. There's one kind of way that you can, and that's doing Nomapalooza. Like during the Vault event, you farm Vault event a bunch, and you do a bunch of Nomapaloozas, and those Nomapaloozas convert to Vault keys, and then those Vault keys have a chance to convert to diamonds. However, since there's no Vault weekend this weekend, you won't be able to do that during the duration of this week. So unless you have like a bunch of Vault keys on reserve, there's not really a way you'll be able to get a lot of diamonds in a pinch. So if you're a lot short, you unfortunately might not be able to close the gap. But if you are within range of getting this, especially if you don't have a copy, 100% 100% get Weaver this week. Not only is it an amazing Mythic, among one of the better within the entire game, but it's also a really good Guild War Mythic, having resummon of one of the best summons of anything in the entire game, having a triple damage summon, has Impervious with Stealthy, which is a great combination, which makes it pretty immune to a lot of situations, has 20 mana cost as a Mythic, which is a very low mana cost for a Mythic, ends up getting a full board clear pretty much if it gets a kill, gets to web all enemies, which is one of the better webbers in the game, and it has true damage to 2 units, which synergizes with things like Life and Death itself, as well as any other real kind of like true damage composition, of which it has multiple ways to be able to be used. Aside from that, as far as a couple other pickups, while I normally don't say Legends are that worth crafting, it is somewhat worth mentioning that Holy Saint Astra is available this week. This is most noteworthy for Tesla teams, if you're going to run double Tesla, or if you already own double Tesla but you don't own Holy Saint Astra. Well, it's generally not advised to craft Legends, because it's better just to go for Mythics instead. This is one somewhat rare exception where if you want to end up going with the Tesla build, you have the Teslas but you don't have her, this would allow you to do so. Main reason why it's used in Tesla build is it gives all humans 50% mana start. Tesla is a human, and double Tesla is absolutely insane for running through the entire game. If you have double Tesla Holy Saint Astra, you pretty much can do any piece of content as long as you aren't color restricted out of using that team. Like, for example, for Blue Tower of Doom, you can't use her this week because she's not blue, but in many contexts you can end up using it with Tesla, and it's really strong. Aside from that, pretty much every other Mythic not really worth getting this week, mostly because obviously Arachnian Weaver is just such good value that there's really no reason you should be going for anything other than Arachnian Weaver. Even if you already have a Weaver, it's almost worth considering getting a second, potentially. If you already have Life and Death, you probably don't need a second Weaver unless you just really feel like doing it for no reason. But if you don't have Life and Death, Double Weaver isn't horrible. It's a good alternative until you do have a Life and Death option or some kind of other similar option to run with it. As far as weapons, we do actually have 2 Doom weapons. So this is what I was talking about with the reduced price. Doom weapons on the week that they are released are slightly cheaper than Doom weapons later. It's not that big of a difference. However, I do advise getting this for 500 gems just for completions purposes, as getting these things after the fact is extremely pricey and is generally not worth it unless it's like a really, really meta one. So do be mindful of that. Aside from that, nothing really too useful to really end up getting in the weapon category unless you're just getting stuff for completionist sake or for kingdom upgrading purposes. But overall, probably a good week to just overall skip on the weapons that are available, as Arachnian Weaver is by far our highest priority given its half-price nature this week and only this week. Anyways, aside from that, a bunch of teams for this week. Obviously, we don't have any campaign going on since this is the downtime before Season 7, where we have Tower of Doom, and it ends up going into Season 7. Which we'll have, of course, going on next week. Anyways, as far as... also, one other thing I forgot to mention. I meant to mention it over here, but we actually have something else going on this weekend. So after Bounty Event, or technically during Bounty Event, this Saturday, the Halloween pet for 2020, so last year's Halloween pet, if you didn't already get it, or you just want more copies of it, or if you just want to go max it, we do have the 2020 Halloween pet coming out this Saturday for the full 24-hour duration of that. So at Saturday Reset, definitely worth picking up, especially if you don't have any copies of it, and even if you do, you just get more copies of it. So do be mindful of that. 2020 Halloween pet this Saturday. Also next week's Wednesday, we're getting the this year's one, but you can get last year's this Saturday, so do be mindful of that. Don't forget about that, especially if you're missing it. Anyways, aside from that, some teams, all these teams as per usual will be in the description below if you want to go copy paste any of them. So we're going to be starting from the most expensive and working our way down to cheaper teams. Do be mindful, even though Blue Tower of Doom is a blue restriction, you are allowed to use any color weapon. While all your troops have to specifically be blue, your weapon can be literally any color you want. It does not have to be blue. Of course, it can be blue if you want, though it doesn't have to be blue to end up using it for this. Do be mindful, in Guild Wars it does, otherwise you will get penalized. However, in Tower of Doom it does not. You will not get penalized for using a incorrect color weapon in Tower of Doom. Only in Guild Wars you would. Anyways, so Blue Tower of Doom. So obviously mostly blue compositions, with the weapon being whatever you want. One thing that you can end up doing for this is a Iron Gut related build. One thing to mention about this is, since every single room is individual, even though it kind of looks like Delve's Tower of Doom, it's not exactly Delve's, because in a Delve, when you start it, you have permadeath for the duration of the Delve as you go from room to room. Tower of Doom is a little bit different in that every single room is a completely different instance, so you can change your team completely between them, and you don't have to worry about any deaths. The reason why this is relevant is you can get away with High King Iron Gut in first slot, and then kill out your, in second slot, and just have your hero die once it's basically gotten buff. So you could basically use it as a buffer, have your hero die, so you then have High King Iron Gut in first, and then boom, you just Zoog off to High King Iron Gut, and you pretty much just win. Do keep in mind that the Doom itself does have immune insta-kill, devour, and all those kind of things. However, you can still throw Skull Spam at it with your high attack value. And Vashta-Gan's mostly just for cleanup here. This is good for dealing with Dooms. If you've cleared out the entire thing and you only have High King Iron Gut left, you basically just go Vashta-Gan your if you only have a Doom left on the opposing team, you then go devour your High King Iron Gut, and then you just kill them off the true damage, focused entirely on the Doom. So you basically use it as your finisher to get rid of the Doom, since it has immune to both devour and insta-kill. But you can still go down the Skull route, of course, of Zugoff, but you can also go down the Vashta-Gan route. This also helps with Curse, so if you want to be able to devour more things, High King Iron Gut will then be able to devour them, since you get Curse whenever you take Brown, and with Mountain Crusher, you're probably taking a lot of Brown, as well as mana accumulation that you'll just naturally be getting from it. So overall, should be able to tear through the later levels pretty well. For the super early levels, you might run something a little bit more like this, where you just run Teslas. Of course, as I mentioned, we do not have access to Holding State Astra, unfortunately, because she's, of course, not blue. However, you still do have access to double Tesla, so yeah, you can just do that. Tapon would be the next alternative here, since we can do this to try to convert into mana, specifically red here. And a Reflection of Good is mostly just for us to tank. You could go with a tankier hero class as well. We just happen to be going down that route. This is mostly for the earlier battles anyways, just for kind of clearing out probably up to the mid-range until you maybe switch to a bigger team, though this could theoretically go the entire way if you so had to. So this next one's kind of interesting. So, remember when we mentioned Baldur earlier? Yeah, he's kind of broken. I was messing with him a little bit. So you can go with a different weapon here. I'm showing this with Mang because it's really accessible. You have it by like level 200 or less. You get it really early on in the game. You can switch this out for a different blue weapon if you feel like you have enough attack value already, so that Baldur has a higher value. One nice thing about this is, yes, he's completely mana blocked. However, you're going to have Enchant. So in any game mode where you have Enchant and you're allowed to use Baldur, is going to be rather interesting, because it doesn't actually matter if you full block him, because if you're doing it with something like a Titan hero class, he's going to start with half mana start because of Giant, which means after 2 turns he would have full mana, because on the first turn he gets 2 mana, then another 2, and then another 2. So off the half mana start, even if you accumulate no mana for him, by turn 3 you'll end up having full mana, because turn 1 does count as one of your 2 mana gains for the enchant at the beginning. So you'd go from 6 due to Titan, then to 8, then to 10, and then to 12. And even if you didn't take any mana by 3rd turn, you'd be able to cast every Baldur on your team and then just spam them and just go crazy. Currently in this composition, of course, you'll create 16 skulls. However, if you switch out your weapon for a blue weapon, you'd be able to do 20. One option for that is potentially Rope Dart or something similar, though that's a lot harder of a weapon to potentially have if you're a newer player. So this is the cheaper build. But do consider if you feel like you have enough attack value, do consider a different blue weapon, or a blue weapon, so that you get the better value off of Baldur. While you might be blocking him a little bit more early on in the game, it will be better for his skull spam, being able to create additional 4 skulls every single time he casts. But yeah, Baldur's pretty insane. I highly advise messing around with him. I might even have a video just specifically going over him and Weaver we might need to cover this week. Weaver because it's so cheap and useful for Guild Wars, and Baldur because this thing's actually pretty insane. Speaking of things we didn't end up covering a video for, though, of course we did get a new weapon last week. And it didn't really seem justifiable to really cover a video on it because there wasn't really too many options. However, I do want to mention this. A restriction, I believe, for Tuesday faction event is yellow-blue, if I'm not mistaken. I know for sure yellow is one of them, and the blue would make sense, is Frostfire Keep. But one thing that's kind of interesting about this is triple finesse into not Nimbus Bow, but the new weapon that we got last weekend, which is Staff of Storms. So this ends up exploding a bunch of yellow and grants a random status effect to all Strix, which, guess what, is your entire team, and it also has a resummon. This is pretty good for factions because one slight issue that finesse team slightly has, like on occasion, is occasionally you'll lose one of your finesses, and then your team kind of breaks down a little bit. However, you have a solution to that now. You can just summon. So not only do you not need Nimbus Bow anymore, but you can just use the new Staff of Storms, get your resummon, get mana accumulation, and it's arguably actually better than using Nimbus Bow. So yeah, and it's a lot more accessible because while you can't obtain it at this current moment in time, you were able to get it last weekend, so a good majority of people probably picked it up, so worth considering running this. Finesse is super cheap, and just triple finesse into this and you'll be good to go. Not the most optimal team you could be using, but it can run the entire way and it would get the job done. So worth considering. Definitely very cheap, since it's literally 3 commons with a weapon that was available last weekend. So here's the troop I was talking about earlier. So Frostfire Wraith is pretty noteworthy in a couple of reasons. Well, for one, he can literally solo pure faction. That's pretty funny. He's actually the most viable way to do the pure faction. However, there's something even more noteworthy about this. If you're early on in the game, a lot of stuff really good for early game this week. Stormheim's a pretty good kingdom for that, if nothing else. But even has like Valkyrie for early soul farming and stuff like that, which I didn't even mention, but is still somewhat relevant. Though soul farming's not as relevant because of Nomopalooza and everything. But anyways, most noteworthy thing about this, 65% reduction. This is one of the highest reductions on the entire game, on the absolute cheapest troop relative to that. It is only a rare, meaning it has rare trading costs, which means it's super, super cheap to end up fully trading this thing. Not only this, but it is a faction rare, meaning you can always target it. If you have 100 shards laying around right now, you can probably go get a Frostfire Wraith. All you'd have to go do is do Frostfire Keep in the Underworld, go throw like 100 to 200 shards, and you probably will be getting at least one copy of this thing, most likely, since he's such a high chance of dropping there. Specifically, where you end up getting it is over here. If we go all the way out, go over to go over to Underworld, and go over to Frostfire Keep, and then we click on this little portal, and you have a... wrong one. You have a 23.49% chance, meaning if we open 10, there's almost a guaranteed chance we will see, well, there we go, 4 copies, as you can see, that you'll see at least one copy of Frostfire Wraith. This is literally the whole team that we just showed right there. There's all 4 copies within 200 shards, though he has a 25% chance of dropping or so. So yeah, go do that. That's with a 25%, that means theoretically 80 shards would be enough, though of course it could take slightly more. Yeah, it's a really cheap, it's a really cheap score reduction troop. So if you currently don't want to have to run Titan or, you know, some kind of Barry on Brown hero class in early game, and you're getting kind of tired of running like hero in first slot always, you can put a Frostfire Wraith there instead. He has life steal, so he ends up not only doing true damage, but he gets to keep the life of what he does as true damage, so he gets to gain durability. He has some extra stats this week, that's not too relevant, but most noteworthy, of course, Ice Armor, 65% reduction, which is basically a 2/3 reduction to all skulls, which is pretty much one of the highest score reductions in the game. There's technically 70, 75, and 80% reduction. However, every single one of those is currently on a legend or a mythic, and this is only a rare that has 65% reduction, so pretty insane. Yeah, if you haven't already gotten this thing and you want a good tank, definitely worth considering. And aside from that, as far as the last team to mention, and a somewhat interesting one, is the Pure Giant team. So of course, the restriction for this Thursday class event is Stormheim for Giants. So Giant Stormheim you specifically have to use. And what's pretty noteworthy about this location is it has the highest amount of HP in the entire game. Well, this isn't really too relevant because obviously you'd want damage more often than you would want to have a billion HP. It has a lot, like a ridiculous amount. We're getting like 30 here, 21 there, 6 there. This is even maxed all the way. That'll be even 12 once we get the thing maxed. So there's a lot of HP to be gotten here when using a bunch of giants, because you're going to have the Stormheim giant synergy every single time, and it's even almost getting the full elemental synergy too. What's not elemental? Oh yeah, the hero class is the only thing that's not elemental on this team, because you need it for half mana star on giants, of course. So it's actually impossible to actually 4 times that, because there's no double typing hero classes yet. No, I highly doubt they ever will. But every hero class only counts as 1 typing, although technically 2, hero and whatever its secondary is. There's nothing that actually goes based on hero. But anyways, so yeah, a lot of life. It's a pretty solid team. You can easily run it for the Thursday event. There's some other instances you can kind of throw it out. It's not like super meta, but it's fun to mess around with if you never built this team. Doesn't use any mythics either. Well, I guess technically Dawnbringer's a mythic, but you can trade that out for a different weapon if you so choose. Plus, with how Nomopaloozas are these days, it is easier than ever to end up getting a Dawnbringer. Still not like ultra easy, but definitely easier than it has been in the past, that is for sure. But anyways, guys, that'll wrap it up for this video. If you still have any other questions or anything you want me to go over, definitely feel free to leave it in the comment section below. As I mentioned, all the teams will be in the description, and as per usual, we will be streaming every single night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tonight we'll mostly be doing the Tower of Doom here on the channel, and then every other day we'll be doing messing around with Guild Wars and all the usual stuff we normally do on stream. But anyways, guys, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Don't forget to craft Arachne Weaver if you have the diamonds for it this week, and I will catch you guys soon. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, as always. Greatly appreciated.